So Jim, here we sit 20 years later. How did it start?
Well, if we stop and think about it, that was June 6, 1995, when 86 members of David Starr were commissioned after the graduation service, had a service in the woods. We were commissioned then to begin a mission of outreach here in Jackson, in the village of Jackson. Now, what led up to it was the fact that the school at David Starr was very, very crowded. And what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? A committee was established. We studied it. We decided to see if we could raise some money.
That must have been a huge success, right?
It was, well, yes and no. What happened was it fell flat. Did the Lord bless it? He certainly did, because here we are today. It wasn't what we intended to do, but it's what God had in mind for us. And so when we found out that no, adding on to the building at David Starr is not an option, okay, now let's pursue the idea of a daughter congregation in Jackson. We had a committee set up of members from David Starr and from Morning Star. I was one of them, to look for land. We looked at land on Sherman Road, decided against that. It's too close to David Starr. We looked at the land near Cary Foods. That was not for sale. We even looked at land where Culver's now stands. And we maybe could have pursued it, but it would have given us tremendous visibility as a church. But school, kids crossing Highway 45, Highway 60, no. Our first priority. We checked with people in the village of Jackson, and the people at the village hall were tremendously supportive and encouraging, and gave us an idea. There's a parcel of land off Highland Road. Why didn't you check that out? We did. It was not in the village, but it was next to the village. And after several weeks, maybe even months of negotiation, we were able to buy this land from Darwin Hayford, and he was very happy that there was going to be a school here. We purchased it and immediately petitioned for annexation to the village of Jackson. They were elated because now they could extend the sewer lines, the water lines, rebuild the road. Highland Road at one time was just all it was Township Road.
Yeah, it was when we first came, it was a crowned road, and the only houses on the block were the house that's directly next door and the one over here, and then the corner homes.
Right.
That's it. This was an empty field. As a matter of fact, I have a picture with my wife standing in future site of Morning Star, and there it is, cornfield. That was it, period. And there was no thought of the homes that were going to go into the north of this property. There was some speculation, but just, this was country.
Yeah, everything north of Highland Road, nothing. Even on the west side of Jackson Drive, that was vacant. This has all been built up and opened up since. So, all right, so now we buy this land, and how do we pay for it? Here's this group of maybe 100 people. We don't have any kind of a track record, any kind of a financial record, but what we did do is we leaned on the reputation of David Starr. They've been here for years and years and years, and they are sitting on a bunch of land, so they had collateral. They co-signed, and they also then pledged that we will give you $700,000 to buy land, to build the school, and they held true to their word. And it was just amazing, you know.
The thing that is amazing to me is that if you really think about it, it's almost like congregational suicide to send 86 people away to do something totally different. But yet, with the support of the pastors, it was an amazing situation. It's a weak word almost to use to describe it.
We have to give a lot of credit to Pastor Girdle.
Oh yeah.
Who is now a professor at the seminary, but he was just so supportive of everything, very, very positive. And even in all of the discussions at David Starr, in the congregational level, there, it was very positive the whole while. And so we started meeting at the community house, or community room at the fire hall. And we started moving there. We were able to store some folding chairs there. We borrowed a lectern from Kettle. That was our pulpit. We had a table. That was our altar. Well, we were so blessed that finally we did not have enough room to store chairs. So I don't know for how many weeks it was. Every Sunday, stopped at Kettle, loaded up a bunch of folding chairs on the trailer, took them in after services, brought them back. But it was great. And I remember the elation that people had when we finally had 100 people in attendance. It was fantastic. Yeah.
This congregation has a real history with folding chairs, doesn't it?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And so that was just an amazing thing. So yeah, we were just very, very fortunate in all of that. So and people have pitched in and volunteered, and well, you've had a lot of experience working with those people too.
Oh yeah, we've always had a tremendous spirit of volunteerism. I think one of the most amazing things, we were able to take on a lot of our early school furnishings because there was a railroad company that was closing out in Chicago. And we formulated a group of about 6 guys, and we jokingly called ourselves the Stud Committee. Shop till you drop, because what we were going to be doing is we were actually going to be turned loose in this 5-story office building in downtown Chicago, very near Willis Tower. And we could tag anything that we wanted, and whatever would fill a semi would cost us $5,000, and they were going to actually haul it up here. Well, then the next problem is, where do you go with all that stuff? I mean, this is basically a year's worth of furnishings, or at least to getting us started on these furnishings. And here we are, a semi-truck coming, where do you go? Somebody volunteered warehouse space. So we load it all into the warehouse for a year. Then, of course, not only do you have to have this stuff stored, but you got to figure out how to get it sorted out and put in the right place when it needs to be. So we're moving towards the school year. We think we've got everything under control, and I'm looking at the block work here at Morning Star, and there are openings in the wall that just shouldn't ought to be there, and so we find out we're not going to be able to do this. So here we are, stuck, no school to open, and we're maybe 3 weeks from opening. We had to go to the village of Jackson, and we had to secure a conditional use permit for Christ Lutheran School on Highway 60, which is kind of ironic because
that's where Kettle started. That's where we had our. That's where we were the first 3 years.
Well, we didn't say 3 years, thank goodness.
Right.
We had a 60-day conditional use permit, and we moved out on day 59. We moved into this building on November 1st, 1995, and it was an amazing thing because the original faculty, which basically goes back to Dorothy Roosh, who shared time between David Starr and Morning Star, Susie Jans had kindergarten, Maxine Harvey had grades 1 and 2, Lynette Stammen taught grades 3, 4, and 5, and then I had grades 6, 7, and 8. And as a faculty, we went over to the warehouse where all the furnishings were stored, and we all had our little color-coded stickers. Each teacher had their own color. And I basically said, if you think it'll work in your classroom,
Take it.
put a sticker on it, it's yours. Then Lynette Stammen made a nice poster board, and we set that in the entryway to the school. And we had scheduled 2 nights, 4 hours each, and we moved everything into all the classrooms in 3 hours on the first night. So if you want to talk about volunteerism, we've always had a great spirit of volunteerism here. We've also had a great spirit of giving, too. Do you remember Shining Like the Stars?
Yes.
That was an amazing situation. So often you go into these building programs and you ask for pledges. Just, what do you pledge to this project? There were a lot of people here that weren't part of the David Star group, and they didn't have an opportunity to commit to this kind of a project and build. And Shining Like the Stars was a program that allowed them to do that. Now, bear in mind, Jimmy, remember, these were actual gifts. This wasn't a pledge.
Oh.
And so over a couple of month period, we ran this Shining Like the Stars program, and then we had the reveal. The kids came out on the stage. There were 6 of them, and they all had their cards in front of them. And the goal was quite strenuous. Do you remember what we were asking?
Oh, it would go into about 6-7 figures, wouldn't it?
Yeah. We were trying to, here we are, a congregation that's just over 100 members, and we're asking them, consider giving a gift of $1,000. So there we are. The kids walk out on stage. They've all got their cards turned backwards, and they start from the decimal points, and they move forward. $92,000. Actual gifts, not pledges. Actual gifts. Did we fall short of our $100,000 goal? I don't know. When you think about it, $92,000 in gifts. An incredible display of first fruits giving.
Right. Yeah, and what an example. And, to just realize that with the Lord, it's possible, and He encourages us, test me and see. And He blesses it, and we don't see anybody begging for bread.
And that's the amazing thing, too. Early on, when the class sizes were getting very, very large, we had the classrooms, but we didn't have the funds available to call full-time teachers. And there again, we've always had people in this congregation who were dedicated to making sure that things went the way they needed to. We had volunteer help with the remedial program. We had actually someone who stepped forward and gave us an entire year at no cost to the congregation. And that allowed us to do kindergarten, grades 1 and 2, grades 3 and 4, grades 5 and 6, and then grades 7 and 8. And that was kind of a watershed mark for us, because Morning Star stayed that way for a number of years. So the spirit of volunteerism, great thing.
So, Mike, how did it come about that you would be the first principal here at Morning Star?
It was a kind of an amazing series of events, but to answer that question, first of all, you have to realize I had been serving 6 years at Centennial Lutheran School in Milwaukee. And prior to that, I served a small mission congregation of 125 souls in California. And they had this fantastic idea to daughter a congregation through starting a school. But being a mission school and a mission congregation, everything that we did had to be approved by the mission board. So we took this grand plan of starting a school to build a congregation to the mission board and eventually to Synod, basically. And the response was an overwhelming, that's not going to work. You can't do it that way. It won't work. And we were denied the opportunity at that point in time to be able to do that. It was shortly after that, about 2 years after that, that I received the call to Milwaukee. And as I said, I'd been there about 6 years, and I got a call to Zumbrota, Minnesota. And the call was to teach grades 6, 7, and 8. And a wonderful friend of mine said, we need to talk. So he picked me up. We went to a park in Milwaukee, and we started talking. And basically, he said the equivalent of, come on, you've been there, you've done that. You don't need to move to Minnesota to continue to do that. And I thought, these are the same feelings I'm having. And so I thought, been there, done that. I returned the call to Zumbrota, Minnesota. 3 days later, the call to Morning Star was on my desk. And the same person, my good friend, who had recently told me, been there, done that, you don't need to go there. He came back over and he said, when do we pack the bags? So it was a wonderful opportunity to do something that had been a thought in my heart and mind 8 years previous to that. And then to be able to actually come to teach at David Star. There are a lot of people that don't realize that I spent a year at David Star, teaching at David Star. And the amazing thing is, when you would go to that school and walk through the hallways, you were walking through a classroom because they had a classroom in a hallway. The first semester I taught the 8th grade class, and the second semester I taught a 6th grade class, 36 kids in just sixth grade, which really gives evidence as to why what David Star was doing had to be done.
Yeah, it's amazing. And if we think of the growth here, it's been a tremendous blessing. You have been a tremendous blessing, as have been all of our called workers. And not only called workers, but so many people that are giving of themselves and have given of themselves. They're not going to be denied. We are going to have this, and with God's help, it will go.
You want to speak about many hands make work light, the old proverb. So many opportunities that people had early on to get involved and help out with their hands, to actually do serious volunteer work, to move furnishings, to do what needed to be done, to paint stain or to paint molding, all of those things that had to be done. And now these same hands sitting at Morning Star may not have the same kind of hammer and nail opportunity, but to display that same spirit, many hands giving, also make the work light.